Good evening. Welcome to Newsmax TV's live coverage of America Votes 2016, the New York primary. I'm J.D. HAYWORTH, just a little past 8 in the East, about 1 hour away from polls closing in the Empire State. So if you're a New York voter, you have until 9 p.m. Eastern to cast your vote. Now, wherever you call home, you literally have a chance to make your voice heard, because tonight, in just a few minutes, we'll be taking your phone calls. Simply pick up your phone and call me at the number on your screen, 877-NEWSMAX. That's 1-877-639-7629, and we'll put you on the air live to offer your comments and give you the chance to speak with some of your favorite Newsmax TV guests. Again, the number, 1-877-639-7629, and we'll begin taking your calls in just a few minutes. Now, as we await the results from New York, let's take a look at where things stand overall in terms of the GOP battle for delegates. Donald Trump, the front runner, leading with 756, Senator Ted Cruz at 559, and Governor John Kasich trailing far behind with 144 delegates. It is important to note that Senator Marco Rubio has 171 delegates. That was the total when he suspended his campaign following his poor finish in Florida, and Senator Rubio has yet to release those delegates. So, what is at stake tonight in terms of delegates in New York? Well, there are 95 Republican delegates up for grabs. It's important to note that technically New York is not, strictly speaking, a winner-take-all state, though that could happen tonight if it turns out to be a really good evening for Donald Trump. There are 3 automatic, 11 at large, and 81 delegates among the state's 27 congressional districts to be allocated through various formulae. But the bottom line, according to USA Today, is this. The front-runner needs to win more than 50% of the vote plus one, 50% plus one statewide, and also 50% plus one in each of the state's congressional districts in order to win all of those 95 available delegates in New York. Of course, Donald Trump calls New York home, so of course Mr. Trump showed up earlier today to do his civic duty at the polls, and as you might expect, that became a major media event. In fact, as you see the Donald signing up there to go take his ballot and walk into the privacy booth, a reporter yells out, "Hey, who are you voting for?" Mr. Trump smiled and responded, this is a direct quote, "Easy decision." For more on all this, let's bring in our panel. First, Skyping in from Southern California, Los Angeles to be specific, political commentator Michael Reagan. As always, you can find and follow Michael on Twitter at Reagan World. Also joining us, the former Lieutenant Governor of New York, Betsy McCaughey. And also here, former New York City Police Commissioner Bernie Kerik, checking in from Newsmax, New York. Betsy, first to you, since your name actually appeared on the ballot there in New York State in times past, we're hearing some results from exit polling. One is that the RNC and overall the Republican Party should pay more attention to, it's been a subject of conversation before, based on the ABC News exit poll. More than 70% of Republicans emerging from primary polling places today said the candidate with the most votes in all the primaries should be the nominee. That's really the crux of the dispute right now in the Republican Party, is it not?
It is. And in addition, the exit polls also showed that a very large majority of Republicans want an outsider candidate. So forget if there's a contested convention throwing it to Kasich or Ryan, who are insiders. Republicans would rather have somebody straight out of the phone book. They want an outsider. Let me just say I'm concerned about one other thing, and it's a persistent problem in New York, and that is voter fraud. The number of polls that were closed when people arrived in the morning to vote, it's an outrage, and it's been going on for decades. It will have a much bigger impact on Sanders' vote than on anything on the Republican side, but it is still a scandal for New York, a shame for this state.
And Bernie, Betsy made mention of this, the fact that New York City is under the spotlight for voting problems. For example, it was reported no Republican ballots in Harlem, to one polling place where the site coordinator did not show up, and it took 90 minutes to find a replacement. It's been so bad, the New York City comptroller said hundreds of thousands may be dealing with polling problems, and that he's going to go audit the Board of Elections. Is it conceivable this could have an outcome, an impact on the outcome? If that is so, I guess it'll be more on the Democratic side. Wouldn't that be the case, Bernie?
Well, it would be, but you know, the shame of this is that this stuff has been going on for decades. And it happens every single time, and every time the comptroller or some New York official says, oh, this is terrible, it's an outrage, and we have to do something about it. And then the next time, it's the same thing over and over and over again. Somebody has to be held accountable for this stuff. It should not happen, and it continues to happen. So I think the governor, somebody, has to address it.
And we will continue to keep an eye on the implications of what transpires tonight. Michael Reagan, as you are sitting out on America's left coast, looking back eastward to what happens tonight in New York, there has been a lot of talk. The other news story, besides the actual voting today in the Empire State, the fact that Donald Trump has apparently reshuffled the deck administratively. Paul Manafort, who had some background with your dad, also with Gerald Ford in the 70s. Apparently, Mr. Manafort has been elevated in terms of the campaign hierarchy, though he does not have the title of campaign manager. Others have been brought in with past experience. What does that tell you, and what should it tell the rest of us, Michael?
It should tell us that Donald Trump knows that he needs people on the ground if he's going to get the delegates he needs to win the nomination, in Cleveland, Ohio, in July. That's how the game is in fact played. And he didn't have a ground game. He had a 757 flying all over the country, getting people to love him, having 20,000, 30,000 people show up, but he forgot about the ground game. Think about football. Is it just an air war or is there a ground war? There's also a ground war going on, and he's been getting his butt kicked by Ted Cruz on the ground. He had to change that. And it's nice he hired Paul Manafort, because think about this. Ronald Reagan, my father, reshuffled the deck on the morning of the New Hampshire primary back in 1980. And who did he fire? Paul Manafort.
And who went in there to give John Sears and Paul Manafort the news? A guy named Michael Reagan. Let's go to the telephones. Our first call comes from Las Vegas. This is Sonny. Sonny, welcome to Newsmax TV's America Votes.
How you doing, JP?
Doing great, Sonny.
Yeah, I'm going with Trump.
Go right ahead, sir.
I'm hoping that Trump can do what he's got to do. The man is phenomenal. He's successful in everything he does. I'm hoping New York wakes up and votes him in.
Now, Sonny, I hear your voice, and you sound like you might be a transplanted New Yorker out to Las Vegas. Is that the case? And
I was born in New Jersey.
And what most has impressed you about Donald Trump? What speaks volumes to you about Mr. Trump and his candidacy?
The guy doesn't stop. He just continues on and takes care of things the way he's supposed to. And he's a phenomenal person. I mean, the way he speaks, even though sometimes it's a little New Yorkie, but that's the way we talk. We can't help it.
Well, and we're happy to hear that New York accent from Las Vegas, Sonny, and we appreciate that. To that point, Betsy McCaughey, the fact is that Trump the other night at the big GOP gala started talking about what he was able to do in the city of New York. In fact, at that hotel, and a lot of folks looked at that and said, here's a guy telling us about accomplishments. Now, it may not be written on the national stage, at least that night in New York, but it made for an effective, if not exactly typical, stump speech.
It definitely did. And let me point out that Donald Trump has built a business empire, including literally building many huge buildings. Hillary Clinton couldn't run a gas station. I can't wait to see Donald Trump tear her apart on the debate stage.
Bernie, Kerik, let me turn to you because as the former New York police commissioner, you probably have more than a passing acquaintance with Mr. Trump. Your take on his candidacy and what it means tonight, not only in New York City, but across the Empire State.
Well, I think, look, Donald Trump has brought something to light that a lot of Americans have been yearning for years, and that is get beyond the status quo. Stop talking, get away from the Washington politics, the politics as usual. Get somebody that says what they mean, is going to do what they say. You have to look at the guy's history. Listen, when he gets out there on a stump speech and he says certain things that irritates people, I've heard people call him racist and bigoted and all this other stuff. He has Latinos and blacks and Asians that work for him, and I can tell you they love him to death. When this guy says he's going to do something, it's a project that somebody says is going to take 3 years, he does it in a year. When he wants to get something done, he gets it accomplished. He may not come across, in the way we would like a political leader to come across, but you have to look at his history, you have to look at what he's accomplished, and I think that's what America's yearning for right now.
Let's go way out to Fairbanks, Alaska. That's where Catherine is calling in, and Catherine's here to tell us why she's a Donald Trump supporter. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, JD. Thank you for taking my call.
You betcha.
All right. Well, when Mr. Trump was the reality show host, I was not interested in him. But I am extremely concerned about our country. I'm 67 years old. I've seen enormous changes in our country, and I'm very concerned about the liberal, environmental, feminist viewpoints towards our country. So Mr. Trump, I believe, is a man of his word. He's a good businessman. Business, I understand. Politics, I don't get. I don't like people who say one thing and do another, in which they've done for the last 40, 50 years. And so he has won my heart and my vote. And if the GOP, I'm a registered Republican, always have been ever since I've been voting. And if the GOP somehow negotiates that Mr. Trump does not get the nomination by the popular vote plus the delegates, then I am out.
Now, on that point, we hear you.
That
We hear you, Catherine, and it's something that we've talked about before, Michael Reagan. You hear the passion that Catherine has for Donald Trump. And in fact, Michael Reagan, he borrowed your dad's campaign theme, Make America Great Again. A lot of people think he can do that. Can he mend fences in the party? Or I guess I should ask it the other way, will the establishment mend fences with Donald Trump?
Everybody talks about the establishment, but you just heard the definition of why, in fact, Trump would lose in a general election or Ted Cruz would lose in a general election. Because how do you unify a party when you've been name-calling all the way through the system? How do you get the Cruz people to vote for Trump? And you just heard from her, if Trump doesn't get it, we're walking. And what did Trump say the other day? Oh, I don't want there to be any violence. I'm not saying there will be. I mean, this is the problem you have within the Republican Party. Everybody keeps on blaming the establishment. I'm sitting here thinking about the people who are out there voting. And if they really believe the person with the most votes should win, then Al Gore should be the president of the United States of America. He got 500.
Now, that's a little too clever by half, because that's the constitutional process that involves the Electoral College.
But this is a state process, and the states make the laws. They've been there for absolutely ever. And
that's not a good enough reason. They're rigged.
Every time he loses, he tries to affix blame somewhere than himself. And it was his fault that Ted Cruz was out there doing what Ted Cruz was doing. Now he's trying to fix it with the Manaforts of the world. But to affix blame to the RNC, the establishment, and everybody, listen, there's people running for president of the United States, Ted Cruz and John Kasich. They don't want Donald Trump to get the nomination on the first ballot. Forget the RNC. Get the establishment. Those running against him don't want him to get it. Now,
understood. We're having the fight right now. We also have the battle of the clock. Bernie and Betsy, we thank you. Michael Reagan, obviously you have more to say. You're coming back with me. Hope you'll come back too and call us as we continue our coverage of America Votes 2016 live on Newsmax TV.